Welcome to FinTech Daydreaming, the podcast that dives into the world of banking technologies and the ever-changing landscape of FinTech companies. We bring you real-life examples from global and local thought leaders, as well as experts working within the financial industry, and seek out the best stories from the front lines of financial services innovation, where dreams of industry pioneers meet reality. Hosted by Pål and Ville. This is FinTech Daydreaming.
Hello and welcome everybody to the most important stage at this event. We are FinTech Daydreaming. We're the number one FinTech podcast in the Nordics, one of the top 10 globally. And we've been given the honor to host this stage, at least for this morning. We're going to have some good discussions, some fireside chats and some keynote presentations. But until then, it's just you and me. I'm Pål and this is a two-man show. So
I'm Ville, and you will be enjoying this segment for the first 10 minutes. And then we're going to have two 15-minute fireside chats. And this segment will also be an actual podcast episode, we hope, unless, of course, there's problems with the audio and video. We'll see about that later. But the goal is to have this as a live episode of the podcast. So if you are there in the audience and you enjoy something that we're saying, it's okay to make some noise. Kind of make it sounds nice on the recording when we can tell everybody that it was a live recording that we actually did for this.
Yes.
So yeah, it's good to be here.
It's not the first one?
No.
It won't be the last one?
No.
And we generally talk about FinTech and everything else. And normally, along with Helsinki Fintech Farm, we do a sequence on the podcast called the Nordic Fintech Highlights, where we take their newsletter and do a deep dive into some of the news articles along with Janne, just to explore them a little bit further. The news letter has not quite come out yet.
Nope.
So we don't have a highlight of everything that's going to be in the next newsletter.
Yeah.
But there was something really interesting that happened over the last couple of days.
Oh, what could it be?
Yes. Stablecoin.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I mean, we all love stablecoins, right? We all understand the perfect use cases of stablecoin and why they are so wonderfully important.
Yeah, that's not being sarcastic at all.
No.
So for anybody who's listened to the podcast, you might have noticed that we are a little bit skeptical when it comes to the utility of stablecoins. But it doesn't mean that they are not interesting. And definitely the news that we had this week about the stablecoin consortium joint venture called Qivalis was definitely something that caught our eye. Also personally for me, of course.
And I'm assuming that most people here know the background of Qivalis, but in case they don't, do we want to set the scene here a little bit?
Yeah, maybe I'll build this around two milestones. So basically, Qivalis was first announced last year in September. And I do remember this very distinctly because we were in the Nordic Fintech Week in Copenhagen.
That's right.
We were the media partners there as well. We were doing a live interview, podcasting kind of an episode. And then the news hit, the press release hit that Qivalis was just founded with 12 European banks, starting up a joint venture or a new co basically in the Netherlands to issue a euro stablecoin. Now, I work for Nordea in my day job, so this is just a hobby for me. And of course, having worked with digital currencies in Nordea means that my phone started ringing non-stop after that. So my day was ruined because I had to be on the phone explaining to everybody what is Qivalis, what is it not, and by the way, why is not Nordea part of it?
Exactly. It's probably worth pointing out that Nordea at that time decided not to become members of Qivalis.
Correct.
Yes.
So now fast forward to this week, and now here we are at the Nordic Fintech Summit here in Helsinki, another fintech event where we are the media partner. And of course, there had to be a Qivalis press release yesterday announcing 25 new member banks in the new co. So the now what was originally 12 banks is now 37 banks being the investors in the Qivalis joint venture. Again, aiming to launch a euro stablecoin by the end of this year. And they're doing it so by becoming a regulated e-money institution and being regulated under the markets in crypto assets regulation in Europe, and again, based in the Netherlands. And this time around, my bank is one of those now 37 banks. So again, a bit of a different...
But not the only bank in Finland. Orpe has also joined.
No, so it's quite notable that if you have 37 European banks, it's almost like easier to count which ones are in than which ones are out, because you kind of have to figure out who are out and who is actually not in this case. But yeah.
Now we've got a fairly interesting perspective on the whole position of stablecoin and the growth of stablecoin and cryptocurrencies and everything else. Maybe we should try and be kind, sit on the fence. Let's start with what do we see as being relevant with stablecoin?
So if we look at stablecoins in general, it's quite clear from data, statistics, and research that there are really only two use cases globally that are ready to go now and that are scalable. Number one, obviously, is crypto trading. Now, traditionally, stablecoins were born from the fact that these crypto exchanges struggled to get banking connections in place, and therefore they created these stablecoins from dodgy countries and with dodgy companies issuing them just because it's somebody got a bank account somewhere in the Bahamas and they started issuing stablecoins, and that meant that crypto trading became the number one use case. It still remains the number one use case, 90% of the volume. Second use case at the moment is access to US dollars in countries where they have weak or volatile local own currencies. Now, neither of these are that interesting for a European bank. So the question becomes, what are the use cases that actually might make sense in the future? And here's the point. It is all in the future. The number one question we get all the time is that what is the use case for Qivalis? What is the use case for a euro stablecoin? And the answer is there is none. There's nothing that works today. The cross-border payments do not work. The tokenized marketplaces do not exist unless they are crypto. The kind of cash pooling use cases, which are quite interesting, don't work because there's no liquidity for these stablecoins. And all I'm saying is that all of these might work in the future, especially the tokenized marketplaces. If and when they start to build up, then might be something in the future. But again, the reason why banks like mine joined Qivalis, because we need to figure these things out. There's a lot of things to figure out. And while the future is not here yet, it's better to be part of those conversations than out of them.
I think it's interesting that whenever we start talking about stable coins, the first thing that comes up as a potential use case is remittance. It always seems to be the go-to use case. Yes, but stable coins, they'll solve remittance and it will be instant and it will be so fast and it will be so cheap and it will be so much better until you need to try and actually off-ramp.
Yeah. It's what they call the stablecoin sandwich. It's basically everything is fine and cheap and fast as long as you stay on the chain and you remain your position on that token. But as soon as you actually need to do something with that money, i.e. pay for something in real life, you need the acceptance, you need the liquidity, you need the conversion facilities, and that basically takes back to the territory of not being that useful as they might have perceived before. We can go on and on about the other bit nonsensical comments like programmable payments, which don't exist. But we're not going to. We'll digress on that.
We're not going to. Yeah. So that was our pick of the Nordic news headlines in fintech and banking that have not yet been released as far as the Nordic Fintech Highlights newsletter is concerned. So we did our own little pick there. But as those who do listen to the podcast know, we have a trend of doing jokes.
Yeah.
And we have no guest here with us, and we will have some people joining us, but we're not going to be rude and tell them that they have to tell a joke. So I've decided you can do a joke this time.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah? Do you have a joke?
Unfortunately, I do. So if you ever listen to the podcast, you know that our jokes are less of a joke and more of an anecdote, but they are really bad. So this is another one that's quite bad. So what do social climbers and stablecoins have in common?
When you say social climbers, are you talking about finfluencers?
let's call these kind of Instagram people that like to enjoy the luxury of life that is not paid by themselves.
I have no idea. What do they have in common?
Yeah, with stablecoins, the thing that they have in common is that neither of them ever settle.
Okay, let's move on. We are going to start off with an interesting fireside chat. We've got two fantastic guests with us. I think, Ville, you're going to have to switch over to here.
Yep.
We're going to be talking about the Nordic gateway to the Eurozone, or is Helsinki the Nordic gateway to the Eurozone? And with us, we've got an old friend of ours who's even been a guest on the podcast, and it's fantastic to have her back to talk with us, and that's Monica Liikama. She is founder and chair at Liikama Invest. She's also globally famous for another company that she was part of building. So thank you very much for joining us.
I have a joke.
You have a joke?
Yeah.
Wow, that's even better. But let me first of all also ask Tuomas Toivonen, who is CEO of Holvi, to join us as well.
Ja Tuomas, kätellään, että ne luulet, että mulla on jotenkin, ei väle. Can I do the joke now?
You must. It proves that you've been a guest on our podcast because
know.
you come prepared with a joke.
Yeah. Do you know why bankers make great lovers?
No.
Nope.
No.
They know exactly when to pull out. You're welcome.
God.
Thank you very much.
Monica, you never fail us.
We'll give you a warning. Please go and find the episode we did with Monica.
Yeah.
It's the only episode we've ever had to actually
Edit.
mark. No, we didn't edit it, but we marked it to say
Explicit.
explicit
Language. Awesome.
Yes.
Love it.
Yes. Perfect. Wonderful.
Thank you.
So, thank you for joining us. We have some questions here. Another thing that happens in our podcast is we see the questions and we ignore them.
Yeah, we read them and we're like, this is so shit.
But at least we'll be kind and start here, right? So the first point around this is very, very quickly, if you can just in 2 sentences, tell everybody who you are.
So my name is Tuomas Toivonen, co-founder and CEO of Holvi. We are a B2B-focused neobank turning 15 years old. The bank, not myself, this year. So we've been around for quite a while.
Yeah, Monica Liikama, a former banker and been building in fintech, but I decided it's too fucking boring and easy, so I went into medtech.
As I said, explicit lyrics.
Awesome. Went into medtech.
And
That's the one thing.
Yeah.
I've always thought myself that in fintech, okay, this is super heavily regulated. This is just about a thing I can handle. But I've always said medtech, I'm never ever going to touch that. Like that is just that one level up that is too much for me. So kudos for not taking it any easier, but just leveling up.
I have to actually say also one thing that I need to change now as I'm pivoting into medtech is that I always said that what's the worst thing that can happen with the stuff I do? No one's going to die. And now as I'm starting to inject stuff into people, I need to revise that sentence.
Inject stuff into people.
Yeah, pure birch into pussy. I'm solving incontinence for women.
This has really gone off at It's got nothing to do with fintech. Let's get back on track. And our tech guys over there, you forgot to reset the timer. So this is telling us we're on minus
All is
time,
starting
which is
to get
not true.
stressed.
Yes. Well, we're going to talk about ecosystems, and we're going to talk about how Helsinki is the center of ecosystems, apparently. So everyone keeps saying ecosystems matter. I actually think myself that ecosystems matter, but what does that mean to you?
Well, I mean, ecosystems matter hugely. Like when we started back in early 2010s, like our investors used to joke that we're investing in fintech, like technology from Finland. Like fintech as a thing was not a thing, and it was of course super fun to be able to and need to kind of invent everything from scratch, like fun times, but also like super slow because there really was not that ecosystem. There wasn't anyone that you could go and ask like, how do we do a prepaid card? How do you do a card as a non-bank financial institution? How do you join SEPA payment schemes? That was kind of this mystical information kept at traditional banks, but then also their things had been built years and years ago, so no one actually really knew, like, okay, how to build things from scratch. But of course, now things are kind of like quite different. There is kind of second and almost third generation fintech founders who kind of build things much faster because there is this institutional knowledge in the ecosystem. So, I mean, personally, I wish that 15 years ago I could have talked to myself now and could have told the 15-year ago myself that, like, hey, this is how things actually work. Would have been much faster to build. So ecosystems really, really matter in terms of building this institutional knowledge into the ecosystem.
But ecosystems are notoriously difficult in financial industry specifically. I mean, things like joint ventures, common ventures, and especially if you call them like kind of like ecosystems, they always fall apart. And there's kind of this natural competition, natural friction as well in ecosystems, whether that's driven by open APIs with PSD2 and 3 or anything like that. There is this kind of tension always. So what does make a successful ecosystem, especially in the financial industry? Because again, it's not always clear what works and what doesn't.
Well, I mean, you can look at the startup ecosystem and everything around Slush and the kind of the current wave of entrepreneurship where it's not built around like competition, but it is like, hey, we're all building companies. Let's all help each other and build these companies faster. Whereas in finance, it's often kind of this, and we talked about this when we had a cup of coffee with Monica this morning, that with traditional banks, it's so often that, like, just really, what are these guys doing? What are we doing? And just like this, like kind of like everyone fighting for something that is considered a limited pie. You don't get like a fruitful ecosystem that way.
Yeah. If you think about the lost opportunity, which is still there to be grasped or taken, is the Finnish ecosystem in finance. But it would actually require one thing, and that's a mindset shift of understanding that collaboration beats competition. And in the end, nobody gives a shit about this country because it's so small and there's so few of us, which means that if we actually collaborated and collaborate across the institutions and the different ages in the banks, etc., and with the supervisory authority, I think this could actually be a really great place. Because if we look at Enfuse also, we are very heavily built our narrative around the happiness. And what happiness means is that it just fucking works, which means that when you're doing your core business, working with us and our partners, whether it be Visa, MasterCard, or G&D, anyone, we take care of it. It works. So that peace of mind. And I remember when I used to be a banker wanker back in the old days and went to this Automatia meeting around Siirto. And I went there for one meeting and I realized this will never fly on the level it could because everyone is so focused on not telling each other stuff. And that's, again, coming into the mindset of what you're measuring. So if we are measuring our own success based on being the guardians of information that nobody actually gives a shit about because in a silo it's useless, that's what's killing. And that's why I laughed internally when you said that Helsinki is some kind of, what was the word on that paper?
We were given this. We were told that Helsinki is the Nordic gateway to the Eurozone.
Yes.
Yes.
Probably on that paper it is, but not in real life. But it could be. But it takes all of us to change the mindset and the approach to each other. And I think that's what would be needed. And there is still a massive opportunity. But then, like, thinking about titles and wanking in your own silos, it will never be that.
But to me, it sounds like there's two parts of this discussion, because one of the things that it says on here, we have to focus on Helsinki, apparently.
Okay.
But I think Finland, historically, has actually been quite a dominant global player. If we look back at Nokia, and we now look at Klarna, etc. But in the fintech space, I think there is still a journey that Helsinki and Finland has to make. And I think we're seeing that continuing to grow. But in line with that, isn't the ability to adapt and take advantage of an ecosystem, isn't that partially a change in business model that traditional banks can't easily adopt to?
I think the change is the mindset change. I think for Finland as a country, I work a lot now as I'm a Pimpin resident at the Aalto University also, trying to get more founders and very heavily in building the ecosystem of the next generation. I think one of the big problems, or the only problem we have, is mindset. And as a consequence, we have very few investors here. We are not deploying capital efficiently. We are not growing companies. We are being forced to sell outside of. So they are all consequences. And also this mantra around that, we have a young generation that have never, lived a life of growth, like 20 years of stagnation. Yes, it's true on paper, yet we have a lot of industry that has grown, and the finance industry could be a leader because money is about trust and banking is about risk management. But the mindset is killing us, and as such, just talking about it won't change it. We need to act, and I think everyone can make a difference. Like, choose to suck less when you live here, and as a consequence, we will become awesome.
Yeah, yes, I noticed the time. You keep on pointing to it.
Yeah, I only have 15 minutes. Wonder why I planned this.
We're in the middle of the season where we're playing the ice hockey championships. Where are they? In Vienna? No, anyway, somewhere. And this actually was an event that I spoke in yesterday with this kind of rivalry between the Nordic countries. Now, we all know, unfortunately, from Finnish perspective, is that Sweden and especially Denmark are much ahead in the fintech ecosystem and the levels of investments, for example. And they are not that far away, and they're not that different culturally than we are. So,
they are very different culturally.
Okay, but
the Danes and the Swedes.
Okay,
come on.
There we go.
It's a mindset difference.
Okay, so what in the mindset and what else? What concrete steps we us as Finns can do to make sure that we catch up?
And you need to answer in less than 1 minute.
Okay, but I'll do a short one.
Yeah.
It's not going to be short. Anyway, I'm born in Sweden. Moved to Finland in 1996. So the big difference, which I think it's like Finland versus the other Nordics, and let's not even talk about the Norwegians because they're just happy because they have a lot of money.
Salmon. Yeah.
Yeah, no, shut the fuck up. So it's this. I will pay 100 euros for you not to make 50. And if you go to Sweden and you think about the ecosystem, and in Denmark, it's about, I'm succeeding. Are you? Can I help you? And that's a massive difference. It's the way of being and thinking. And the good thing is also this. Denmark is going to fuck this up now because of how they are doing the taxation with the socialist government. So new founded companies will die there, which is an awesome opportunity for us. You go now.
No, I mean, just following up from that and the fact that, yes, the company hasn't, the country hasn't grown overall, but there are industries like the whole startup ecosystem, growth companies, like that area in Finland really has grown, and there is this like very different mindset.
Yes.
Now we just need to take that mindset and apply it kind of like very widely in the country and beyond, and even apply it in the financial services industry, which is not a prime candidate, like much more conservative, much more careful industry. I mean, risk management is very, very important, but you still need to kind of have that openness to try things, do new things, take risks in areas where even if you fail, it's still very much okay.
No one's going to die.
Time is up.
Yeah, exactly. No one's going to die.
The debate can continue out there, but the time is up and we'll talk over lunch.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you very, very much.
Kiitos, Tuomas. Me oltiin ihan helvetin hyviä taas. Kiitos.
And with that, we move on to our next fireside chat. This time we've got one guest, not two, so it becomes easier.
Yep.
We've got Fabian Klar, who is Regional Sales Manager at ERI. And we're going to talk about technology or technological future in banking. Hello, welcome.
Hello.
Hi, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
There we go. And if we're lucky, they'll update the timer again as well for us, but we'll see what happens. Fabian, we're going to talk about technological future in banking. What are the key drivers for innovation in the upcoming years?
Yeah.
Yes. But before that, just very quickly, who are you? Who is ERI and what does ERI do?
Okay, so, well, as you said, I'm Fabian. I'm Regional Sales Manager for ERI. ERI is a core banking system provider. We have a core banking system called Olympic. It exists since 1989. So I think you could say we're a fintech company from times where fintech was not even an expression anyone used. And we made more than 400 installations on the planet, somewhere everywhere on the planet. And yeah.
All right. What brings you to Helsinki Fintech Summit?
Well, we have been here for a couple of years already. And so we said it is quite a dynamic ecosystem here. So we should be present and also give our view to how things will evolve going forward.
Core banking.
Yes.
Technology.
Yes.
We had Eric in the main stage here this morning talking about their new book, Qivalis Paradox.
Yep.
Talking about legacy. I'm going to take the opportunity very quickly to say I've also got a book coming out at the end of next month called Rip Out the Core, talking about progressive modernization and core banking. Let's talk about legacy for a minute. Can banks innovate fast enough if their foundations are still decades old?
I think the first question you should ask yourself, are actually the banks the ones who are innovating? Right? Because we're on the Nordic Fintech Summit, so you see that there's quite a big ecosystem of fintechs who are actually the ones innovating. And I think personally that banks are more trying to keep up with the pace on regulatory change, on client expectation, on competition from the neobanks and new entries into the financial markets. So my answer is they can, for the time being, defend their position, but I don't think that this will last for long if they continue working on old legacy systems. And we know that roughly about 70% of the banks are working on pretty old, sometimes even mainframe-based systems. And I think if they're not innovating now, it's going to be more and more difficult for them to keep up with the pace of innovation. Because obviously, if one thing is sure, the world will never change as slow as it does today, right? Going forward, right?
Yeah. There's an expression that this time is different. And it's also often referred to when we talk about these new cycles of change and change pressure, especially towards the incumbents, wherever they might be, in this, our case, basically banks and financial institutions. We've been having this discussion for at least 20 years, that there's going to be disruption and the old legacy core is going to slow everything down, and the current banks will be doomed because they cannot move away from that old legacy. Yet here we are in 2026. Banks are still very much here. They are constantly doing new things, not maybe as fast as the fintechs, of course, but they are still kind of moving forward at a pace which allows them to remain relevant and even actually still dominate the market to a large extent. So now the latest thing that is being discussed is AI. Generative AI, agentic AI, and there was a notion that banks will become completely irrelevant. There's this famous Temenos video, for example, where somebody in the video asks, "What was a bank?" And then the AI explains that, bank was this, and then, oh, wow, that sounds very ancient. Well, anyway, I hate that video, that aside. So the question is this: does AI really change the game? Is this time really different?
Well, you asked me now about my crystal ball, right? So I would say, yes, it will change. It will not necessarily change as fast as some might think, right? So financial industry, and especially banking, is all about trust, right? People need to trust you. But you should still not forget that you see already that banks like Revolut, right, which was not known 10 years ago, is now one of the biggest institutions in Europe. So you see that there are change is ongoing, right? What still shocks me somehow is that everyone knows, or on every conference I go, everyone's talking about AI, everyone is appreciating that there will be massive changes, and still we have 70% of the banks being on old legacy systems. So they have siloed data, they have sometimes rubbish data. It's not available in real time. We're still talking about batch-based processing in a lot of banks. On the other hand, we're talking about digital assets, we're talking about atomic settlement, we're talking about feeder, we're talking about instant payment, for example, where data needs to be available basically instantly, right? And we still see that a lot of banks are struggling with keeping up with this, but they are more or less mainly doing lipstick on the pig by, let's say, putting forward some digitalization strategies and AI strategies, but they are not actually working on the foundation of their entire building, right? So the foundation is still old, it's still crap, right? To a certain extent. Everyone talks about AI as being the new thing like DLT and blockchain was 10 years ago. But, financial industry is not changing fast, we know that. But I think personally, if people are not appreciating the fact that after 30 years of having core banking systems that were built up and trying to integrate new fintech solutions into something which has not been built for that purpose, at one point in time, you will be too late. And you see that the neobanks, they are growing exponentially compared to the existing banks, right? So we see the savings and investment union, which requires banks to also offer investment products. Well, I think here in the Nordics, it's already quite known, but there are areas in Europe, especially Southern and Eastern Europe, where investment and wealth management was not a topic at all. It will become a topic, but how do you do that if you're having a system which is 30 years old and which cannot basically cover what clients are expecting nowadays?
What are clients expecting nowadays?
Well, they're expecting that they can access their digital front end more or less at every point in time. They're expecting that payments are executed quickly, low cost, or even no cost at all, while the reality shows that for many, many institutions, this is still wishful thinking, right? And
so the fundamental premise here is banks need to modernize off their legacy because they cannot deliver on the customer expectations?
They cannot deliver on the customer expectations. They have, obviously, with the new challenger banks or neobanks, they have strong competition growing. And me personally, I'm not going on any laptop anymore. I'm doing everything from an app. I can do it instantly. I can do it 24/7. But obviously, for example, for my investments, I'm not using a traditional bank. I'm using a neo-broker because the service they are offering me is significantly better than my traditional banks, which I'm still using to do my regular payments and stuff like that. But I'm not using them for anything going forward.
You mentioned lipstick. Digital lipstick on a pig.
Yeah.
Yeah. That sort of aligns to the risks potentially of just trying to overlay AI capabilities onto your legacy. Is there a danger here of banks just adopting AI and hoping that the legacy will adapt?
Yeah, first of all, I think they are simulating innovation, right? Because in the end, yes, you can do a lot of things with AI, and it will help to improve the customer experience. It will also help in certain processes. But in the end, if these AI technology solutions are not fully integrated, you will still have manual work that is required in the end on the bank side, which will not be 24/7 for sure, because there are only a few banks who could do that 24/7 because they have operations all over the world. But generally speaking, I personally think they need to understand it's all about data, it's all about infrastructure. We know that we have hundreds of fintech companies growing or appearing more or less every day, right? We have specialized solutions for KYC, AML, regulatory reporting, tax reporting, stuff like that. And me working, or in my past, so I worked for companies who were offering transactional reporting, tax reporting, and the biggest topic we were always discussing about are ETL layers. But ETL layers is actually something which is super outdated, because you should not be in the position where you need to extract data to ingest it into a new solution, but there should be APIs being available where this data flows instantly into the other solution, which have absolutely their right to be there, right? But I think if you really want to unfold the power of AI solutions, you also need to have the right foundation in order to really, well, take the best out of it and give your clients the best customer experience.
From my perspective, the fact that fintechs are fast is more of a reflection of their culture than the technology. So it is really the culture of the company that defines what the technology looks like. If you change the technology and the culture remains the same, it will never work. Now, banks will never become fintechs, and now they're facing the challenges that we have just now talked about. You need more technological kind of advancements. You need new types of ways of working as well. What is your advice to banks who want to go on this, need to go on this journey of modernization? How would you approach this from a bank's perspective?
Well, I think first of all, the most important thing is that they understand that they need to do something about the core, right? It is not an easy exercise. It is not. You will not get any celebration around it if you change your core system. Actually, it is quite a risky thing because you need to migrate legacy data, right? We're talking. I mean, it is a little bit unfair to say it's only because the mindset is different. Also, the situation is a very different one, right? The fintechs usually start from a white piece of paper, right? They can actually build on new technology stack, and they don't have to worry about migrating 30 years data into the new solution, right? But in the end, we're talking about FIDA, where there's a lot of resistance from the banking industry coming from. On one side, obviously, because they don't want to lose their advantage of being a trusted counterparty and having experience in this area, but also really technologically wise, they do not have the capabilities. I mean, we saw with PSD2, yes, data needs to be transferred instantly between the different players. But now when we're talking about FIDA, we're talking about open finance, we're talking about basically every area of it, right? So you cannot plug into a middleware which basically extracts the data, but you really need to go back to the core and have data centralized somewhere in real time. Because obviously, if you need to make it available within seconds to, well, competitors or collaborators, right? You need to also have that data available instantly. Now, in Europe, we're talking about T+1, right? T+1 settlement. Yes, it means theoretically you can have an overnight processing, but if there is exception management around it that you need to perform, or an overnight processing will not be sufficient, right? It needs to be instant, and if you don't have the data available, if it's not in the right quality, and if you basically have it fragmented around various different systems, which is somehow also logical because 30 years ago, no one was thinking about basically all the requirements that banks have to fulfill nowadays, not from a regulatory perspective, but also not from the customer expectations. 30 years ago, nearly no one had internet access at all, right? So you were calling up your private banker if you wanted him to buy a security or to shift whatever your investments are, because you simply didn't have the technical possibilities. And technology is evolving so fast that even just by the evolution of technology, it will actually speed up the process where banks need to adapt to basically what is required nowadays.
We've got 1 minute left, and I want to circle back just very quickly to your core banking provider.
Yeah.
So there is a growth of core banking providers, and that whole space is getting very saturated. What's your unique value proposition?
Well, first of all, we're a little bit on the same side than the banks. We say we have 35 years of experience. But in contrary to banks, we invested heavily on our solution becoming more and more, let's say, instant, right? We have hundreds of APIs available. We have real time. We have one database. and so on, because we invested more than €1 billion in our solution. Olympic, or the system, originally comes from the private banking area, right? So we are very used to do basically everything a bank needs to do, right? From securities custody, automated processes around corporate action, and so on. And we heavily worked on making it really a service-oriented architecture, right? So our solution can really communicate in real time with the entire ecosystem a bank needs nowadays. And we don't have that problem with legacy technology because we realized it early enough to basically change it. So we, on one side, have the experience from 35 years plus being in the banking industry. And on the other side, we're innovating our solution constantly. So I think we're taking, well, somehow the best of both worlds in one.
Wonderful. And with that, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks.
Right, wonderful. We are going to move on to a keynote presentation.
And we should also note that this brings our recording.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah. So, as we said, this has been a recording of a live recording. It's going to end up being our next podcast episode. This is the end of that, and we move on to the sort of next part. We're not going away. We're hosting this stage for all morning, but we're shifting gears a little bit.
So we will say goodbye to the listeners online and see you next time.
This is FinTech Daydreaming.